My name is Amelia, and I'm 26 years old. I live in the heart of Nashville, Tennessee, surrounded by music, dreamers, and the intoxicating scent of ambition. I've always been a songwriter, pouring my heart and soul into melodies and lyrics, hoping one day to hear my songs on the radio. For years, I'd been working as a waitress, scribbling down lyrics on napkins during my breaks, always chasing that elusive dream. I wasn't alone in this pursuit, though. My best friend, Chloe, was right there with me. We met in a songwriting workshop when we were both fresh out of high school. We clicked instantly, bonding over our shared love for country music and our burning desire to make it big. We spent countless nights huddled in my tiny apartment, guitars in hand, writing songs, dreaming of sold-out stadiums, and promising each other that we'd make it to the top together. Chloe had a voice that could melt butter. It was smooth, rich, and undeniably captivating. She was a natural performer, confident and charismatic on stage. I, on the other hand, was more comfortable behind the scenes. I loved crafting the stories, building the melodies, and shaping the songs. We were a perfect team, the yin and yang of a songwriting duo. We started playing gigs around town, small bars, and open mic nights, slowly building a local following. People loved our music, our harmonies, and our undeniable chemistry. Chloe, with her stage presence, was always the focal point. I didn't mind. I was content watching her shine, knowing that I had played a part in her success. We were inseparable, best friends and creative partners, destined for greatness, or so I thought. Life in Nashville wasn't easy. The competition was fierce, and the rejection was constant. We faced countless closed doors, dismissive record executives, and the ever-present struggle to make ends meet. But we persevered, fueled by our passion and our unwavering belief in each other. We wrote hundreds of songs, each one a little better than the last. We honed our craft, refining our sound, and slowly but surely we started to get noticed. A few local radio stations started playing our songs. We even got a write-up in a small music blog. Things were finally starting to look up. We felt like we were on the verge of something big, something life-changing. That's when everything started to unravel. A famous record producer, known for launching the careers of several country music superstars, came to one of our shows. He approached us afterward, showering Chloe with compliments, telling her she had the it factor, the star quality that could take her all the way. He barely acknowledged me. It was all about Chloe, her voice, her presence, her potential. He offered her a solo record deal, a chance to record an album and launch her career. He made it clear, though, that the deal was for her alone. He didn't see a place for me in his vision. Chloe was ecstatic. She was practically jumping for joy, her eyes shining with excitement. I tried to be happy for her, truly I did, but a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, that our partnership, our friendship, was about to be tested. And it was. The producer started working with Chloe immediately, shaping her image, refining her sound, and introducing her to the right people. She was swept up in a whirlwind of meetings, recording sessions, and photo shoots. She was constantly busy, always on the go. I tried to stay involved, offering my songwriting services, eager to contribute to her album. But she brushed me off, saying the producer had his own team of writers, that he knew what was best for her. She said it gently, but the words stung. I felt like I was being pushed aside, replaced, forgotten. Our late-night writing sessions dwindled, then stopped altogether. Our phone calls became less frequent, our conversations shorter and more strained. She was drifting away from me, pulled by the allure of fame and fortune. The record deal was supposed to be our dream come true, a testament to our years of hard work and dedication. But it was quickly turning into a wedge, driving us apart. I felt betrayed, hurt, and confused. I didn't understand why she was shutting me out, why she was so willing to abandon our friendship for the promise of solo success. Was our bond not as strong as I thought it was? Was our dream not as shared as I believed? The questions swirled in my mind, fueling my insecurities and deepening my sense of loss. I knew I had to confront her, to find out what was going on, to salvage our friendship before it was too late. But I was afraid of what she might say, afraid of confirming my worst fears. I decided to wait, to give her time, to hope that she would come to her senses and realize the value of our bond. But time was running out, and the silence between us was growing louder, more deafening. The day Chloe's debut single was released, I felt a mix of emotions, pride, excitement, and a deep, aching sadness. I listened to the song online, analyzing every note, every lyric. It was well-produced, catchy, and undeniably radio-friendly. It was a hit, no doubt about it, but it wasn't us. It wasn't the music we had created together, the songs that reflected our shared experiences, our hopes, and our dreams. This was something different, something manufactured, something that felt inauthentic. I scrolled down to the songwriting credits, my heart sinking with each passing second. There was no mention of my name. Chloe had taken sole credit for the song, erasing my contribution, denying my involvement. It was a slap in the face, a blatant act of betrayal. I felt a surge of anger, hot and stinging, coursing through my veins. I couldn't believe she would do this to me, after everything we had been through together. Had our friendship meant nothing to her? Had our years of collaboration been reduced to this, a complete and utter erasure of my existence? I grabbed my phone, ready to call her, to unleash my fury, to demand an explanation. But I hesitated. What was the point? Would she even care? Would she even acknowledge my pain? I knew that confronting her in anger would only push her further away, that it would likely end our friendship for good. I needed to be strategic, to think clearly, to find a way to address this situation without resorting to emotional outbursts. I decided to sleep on it, to let my anger simmer down, to approach the situation with a clear head and a calm demeanor. But sleep didn't come easy that night. My mind raced with thoughts of betrayal, resentment, and the crushing realization that the person I had trusted most in the world had stabbed me in the back. I tossed and turned, replaying our memories, searching for clues, trying to understand how things had gone so wrong. I woke up the next morning feeling exhausted and defeated. The anger had subsided, replaced by a dull ache of disappointment. I knew I couldn't let this go, that I had to stand up for myself, to protect my creative rights, and to reclaim my voice in the face of Chloe's blatant disregard. I decided to consult a lawyer, to explore my legal options, and to find out if I had any recourse for her unauthorized use of my work. I spent the day researching entertainment lawyers in Nashville, reading reviews, and making phone calls. It was a daunting process, but I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. I finally found a lawyer who seemed knowledgeable, experienced, and genuinely interested in my case. Her name was Sarah, and she had a reputation for being a fierce advocate for artists' rights. I scheduled a consultation with her for the following week, hoping that she could provide me with some guidance and a path forward. As I waited for my appointment with Sarah, I tried to distract myself from the situation with Chloe. I focused on my own songwriting, pouring my emotions into new songs, using my pain as fuel for my creativity. It was therapeutic, a way to channel my anger and frustration into something productive and meaningful. I also reached out to some other songwriters in Nashville, seeking their advice and support. I was surprised by the outpouring of empathy and encouragement I received. Many of them had experienced similar situations, of being taken advantage of or having their work stolen. They shared their stories, offering me valuable insights and reminding me that I wasn't alone. Their support gave me strength and renewed my resolve to fight for my rights. The week leading up to my meeting with Sarah felt like an eternity. I was constantly on edge, consumed by thoughts of Chloe and the legal battle that was looming. I avoided listening to her song on the radio, unable to stomach the reminder of her betrayal. I tried to stay positive, to focus on my own goals, and to believe that justice would prevail. But it was hard. The pain of losing my best friend and having my work stolen was a heavy burden to bear. I knew that this situation would change me, that it would make me more cautious, more guarded, and perhaps a little more cynical. But I also knew that it would make me stronger, more resilient, and more determined to protect my creative voice. I vowed to never let anyone take advantage of me again, to always stand up for what I believe in, and to never compromise my integrity for the sake of fame or fortune. The day of my appointment with Sarah finally arrived. I felt nervous, but also strangely empowered. I was ready to face the music, to confront the legal challenges ahead, and to fight for what was rightfully mine. As I walked into Sarah's office, I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I was not alone, that I had the support of my friends, my fellow songwriters, and my own unwavering belief in myself. Little did I know that my meeting with Sarah would not only change the course of my legal battle, but also lead to an unexpected twist that would shake Chloe's world and reveal the true cost of her betrayal. Sarah listened patiently as I recounted my story, her expression growing more serious with each passing detail. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. Amelia, this is a clear case of copyright infringement, she said. You have a strong legal claim, and I'm confident we can win this case. Her words were like a balm to my wounded spirit. Finally, someone was acknowledging my pain, validating my claims, and offering me a path toward justice. Sarah explained the legal process, outlining the steps we would need to take to file a lawsuit against Chloe and her record label. She warned me that it would be a long and arduous battle, that it would likely involve depositions, court hearings, and potentially a trial. But she assured me that she would be by my side every step of the way, fighting for my rights and ensuring that I received the compensation I deserved. I felt a surge of relief and gratitude. Having Sarah on my side gave me the confidence to move forward, to confront Chloe's betrayal head-on, and to seek justice for the wrong that had been done to me. We spent the next few weeks gathering evidence, compiling documents, and preparing our legal strategy. Sarah was meticulous and thorough, leaving no stone unturned. She interviewed my friends and fellow songwriters, collecting testimonials to corroborate my story. She researched Chloe's career, analyzing her interviews and performances to identify any instances where she had alluded to my involvement in her songwriting. The more evidence we gathered, the stronger our case became. It was clear that Chloe had not only stolen my work, but had also deliberately concealed my contribution to her success. As we prepared to file the lawsuit, I couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. I knew that this would be a public battle, that it would likely be covered by the media, and that it would inevitably damage Chloe's reputation. I didn't want to hurt her, but I also couldn't let her get away with what she had done. I felt torn between my desire for justice and my lingering affection for my former best friend. Sarah sensed my hesitation and gently reminded me of the importance of standing up for myself. Amelia, you deserve to be recognized for your talent and your contribution to Chloe's success, she said. You can't let her get away with stealing your work and denying you the credit you deserve. This is about more than just money. It's about your integrity, your artistic voice, and your right to be treated with respect. Her words resonated with me, reinforcing my resolve to move forward with the lawsuit. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, but I also knew that it was the right thing to do. We filed the lawsuit in Nashville, alleging copyright infringement, breach of contract, and fraud. The lawsuit sought damages for lost royalties, legal fees, and the emotional distress I had suffered as a result of Chloe's actions. The news of the lawsuit spread like wildfire through the Nashville music scene. Everyone was talking about it, speculating about the details, and taking sides. Some people supported me, praising my courage for standing up to Chloe and her powerful record label. Others criticized me, accusing me of being jealous and bitter, of trying to sabotage Chloe's success. The public scrutiny was intense, and it took a toll on me. I felt like I was living under a microscope, every move I made being scrutinized and judged. I tried to ignore the negativity, to focus on my own goals, and to trust that the truth would eventually come out. Chloe's response to the lawsuit was swift and aggressive. She denied all of my allegations, claiming that she had written the song entirely on her own, and that I had no involvement in her career. She hired a high-powered legal team to defend her, and they immediately launched a counteroffensive, accusing me of trying to extort her and of making false and defamatory statements. The legal battle escalated quickly, becoming more contentious and more personal with each passing day. Depositions were scheduled, witnesses were subpoenaed, and the media frenzy intensified. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, watching my life unravel before my eyes. The stress and anxiety were overwhelming, and I struggled to cope with the emotional toll of the lawsuit. I leaned on my friends and family for support, finding solace in their love and encouragement. I also continued to write songs, using my music as a way to process my emotions and to express my pain. It was during this difficult time that I wrote a song called The Betrayal, a raw and honest account of my experience with Chloe. The song was cathartic, a way for me to release my anger and resentment, and to reclaim my voice in the face of her betrayal. I shared the song with a few of my close friends, and they encouraged me to release it publicly. They believed that it would resonate with other artists who had been taken advantage of, and that it would send a powerful message to Chloe and her record label. I hesitated at first, unsure if I was ready to expose my vulnerability to the world. But after much deliberation, I decided to take the plunge. I recorded The Betrayal in a small studio in Nashville and released it online. The song went viral almost immediately, racking up millions of views and downloads. People were moved by its honesty, its vulnerability, and its raw emotion. It became an anthem for artists who had been wronged, a rallying cry for creative justice. The success of The Betrayal put even more pressure on Chloe and her record label. The public was turning against her, questioning her integrity and demanding that she acknowledge my contribution to her success. Her record sales plummeted, her radio airplay declined, and her concerts were met with protests. The lawsuit was taking a heavy toll on her career. As the legal battle raged on, Sarah uncovered a shocking piece of evidence that would ultimately change the course of the case. She discovered that Chloe had signed a contract with the producer that gave him a significant portion of the royalties from her debut album. The contract also stipulated that Chloe had to write all of the songs on the album herself or face severe financial penalties. This explained why Chloe had been so adamant about taking sole credit for the song, even though she knew that I had co-written it. She was afraid of violating her contract and losing a fortune. Sarah presented this evidence to Chloe's lawyers, arguing that it proved that Chloe had acted in bad faith and that she had deliberately concealed the truth about my involvement in the song. Chloe's lawyers were stunned by this revelation. They realized that they had been misled by their own client and that they had no choice but to settle the case. They approached Sarah and offered a settlement agreement that would compensate me for my lost royalties, cover my legal fees, and give me co-writing credit on the song. I accepted the settlement offer, relieved that the legal battle was finally over. I had won. I had stood up for myself, protected my creative rights, and reclaimed my voice in the face of betrayal. But the victory felt bittersweet. I had lost my best friend in the process, and I knew that our relationship would never be the same. A few weeks after the settlement, I received a phone call from Chloe. I hesitated before answering, unsure if I was ready to speak to her. But curiosity got the better of me, and I pressed the answer button. "Amelia, it's Chloe," she said, her voice sounding weak and strained. I need to talk to you." I paused, taking a deep breath. "Okay," I said, "what do you want to talk about?" "Can we meet?" she asked. "In person, I have something I need to say to you." I thought about it for a moment. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face her, to confront the pain and betrayal that still lingered between us. But I also knew that I couldn't avoid her forever. We had a lot to discuss, a lot to reconcile. "All right," I said. "Where do you want to meet?" We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop near my apartment, a place where we used to spend hours writing songs and dreaming of the future. As I walked to the coffee shop, I felt a mix of emotions, anxiety, anger, and a flicker of hope. I wondered what Chloe wanted to say, what she was going to apologize for, and if there was any chance of salvaging our friendship. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Chloe was already there, sitting at a table near the window. She looked pale, a ND Chinese letter, her eyes red and swollen. She had clearly been crying. I sat down across from her, and we stared at each other in silence for a moment. The air was thick with unspoken words, with years of shared memories and recent betrayals. "I'm so sorry, Amelia," Chloe said, her voice trembling. "I know I've hurt you terribly, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I never meant for things to turn out this way." I listened in silence as she poured out her heart, explaining her reasons for betraying me, her fears of failing, her desperation to succeed. She told me about the pressure she had felt from the producer, the contract that had trapped her, and the guilt that had consumed her. "I was so scared of losing everything," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought that if I admitted that you had co-written the song, I would be breaking my contract and ruining my career. I know that's no excuse for what I did, but I hope you can understand." I nodded slowly, trying to process her words. I could see the genuine remorse in her eyes, the pain that she had been carrying inside. I realized that she had been a victim of her own ambition, trapped in a web of lies and deceit. "I understand, Chloe," I said softly, "but that doesn't excuse what you did. You hurt me deeply. You stole my work, you denied my contribution, and you betrayed our friendship." "I know," she said, sobbing, "and I'm so sorry. I'll never forgive myself for what I did to you. I've lost everything because of it. My career is in ruins, my reputation is tarnished, and I've lost my best friend." I reached across the table and took her hand. Her skin was cold and clammy. "It's going to take time, Chloe," I said, "but maybe someday we can rebuild our friendship. But first, you need to forgive yourself." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Amelia," she said. "Thank you for listening, for understanding, and for not hating me completely." We sat in silence for a few more minutes, sipping our coffee and reflecting on the events that had brought us to this point. As I looked at Chloe, I couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness and compassion. She had made a terrible mistake, but she was also paying the price for it. Fame and fortune had come at a cost that she was now forced to bear. As I left the coffee shop, I felt a sense of closure. The legal battle was over, the truth had been revealed, and Chloe had finally apologized for her actions. I knew that our friendship would never be the same, but I also knew that forgiveness was possible. I had learned a valuable lesson about the dangers of ambition, the importance of integrity, and the power of forgiveness. I was determined to move forward with my life, to focus on my own songwriting, and to never compromise my values for the sake of fame or fortune. A few months later, I received an invitation to attend the Nashville Songwriters Association International Awards. I was surprised, but also thrilled. I had been nominated for Song of the Year for The Betrayal. It was an honor to be recognized by my peers, to be celebrated for my honesty and my vulnerability. As I walked the red carpet, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. I had overcome adversity, I had stood up for myself, and I had emerged stronger and more resilient. During the awards ceremony, I sat at a table with my friends and family, feeling grateful for their love and support. When they announced the winner for Song of the Year, I held my breath, hoping against hope that I would win. "And the winner is Amelia for The Betrayal," the announcer said. I couldn't believe it. I had won. I stood up and walked to the stage, tears streaming down my face. I accepted the award, thanking the Nashville Songwriters Association, my friends, my family, and everyone who had supported me along the way. I also thanked Chloe for inadvertently inspiring me to write the song that had changed my life. As I looked out at the audience, I saw Chloe sitting in the back row, applauding politely. Her eyes met mine, and she gave me a small, sad smile. I smiled back, acknowledging her presence and offering her a silent message of forgiveness. That night, as I held my Song of the Year award, I knew that I had finally found my place in the Nashville music scene. I had proven that I was a talented songwriter, a resilient artist, and a force to be reckoned with. I had turned my pain into power, my betrayal into triumph, and my vulnerability into strength. And I had learned that true success is not measured by fame or fortune, but by integrity, authenticity, and the courage to stand up for what you believe in. But the story doesn't end there. A few years later, I was approached by a Hollywood producer who wanted to turn my story into a movie. He had been deeply moved by The Betrayal and saw its potential to inspire and empower audiences around the world. I was hesitant at first, unsure if I wanted to relive the pain and drama of my past. But after much consideration, I decided to give it a try. I worked closely with the screenwriter, sharing my memories, my emotions, and my perspective on the events that had unfolded. The movie was a critical and commercial success, earning several awards and nominations. It told the story of my friendship with Chloe, our dreams of making it big in Nashville, and the betrayal that had shattered our bond. It explored the themes of ambition, jealousy, forgiveness, and the importance of standing up for your creative rights. Chloe's character was portrayed as a complex and flawed individual, a victim of her own insecurities and the pressures of the music industry. The movie ended with a scene of me and Chloe reuniting years later, finally forgiving each other and rebuilding our friendship. The movie's success brought me even more recognition and opportunities. I toured the world, performing my songs and sharing my story with audiences of all ages. I became an advocate for artists' rights, speaking out against copyright infringement and promoting ethical practices in the music industry. I also started a foundation to support young songwriters, providing them with resources, mentorship, and opportunities to pursue their dreams. And Chloe, she eventually found her way back to music, writing and performing on her own terms without the pressure of fame or fortune. She and I even collaborated on a few songs together, proving that forgiveness and reconciliation are always possible. In the end, my betrayal story became a story of triumph, resilience, and the power of forgiveness. It taught me that even the darkest moments can lead to unexpected blessings, and that true success is not measured by external validation, but by inner peace and the courage to live your truth. But here's the final twist. Years after the movie's release, I received a letter from an anonymous source. The letter contained a copy of Chloe's original contract with the producer, the one that had forced her to take sole credit for our song. But there was something else in the envelope, a handwritten note that read, "The producer knew about your talent all along. He saw you as a threat to Chloe's success and deliberately sabotaged your career by excluding you from the deal. He wanted to control Chloe completely, and he knew that your presence would challenge his authority. He is a predator." The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been so focused on Chloe's betrayal that I had failed to see the bigger picture. I had been manipulated, not just by Chloe, but by a powerful and ruthless figure who had deliberately orchestrated my downfall. The producer had not only stolen my work, but had also robbed me of my potential, my dreams, and my sense of self-worth. The anger and resentment that I thought I had released resurfaced, stronger and more potent than ever before. I realized that my journey was not yet complete, that I still had one more battle to fight, one more wrong to right. And this time, it wouldn't be about forgiveness or reconciliation. It would be about justice. I knew that taking on the producer would be a dangerous and challenging endeavor. He was a powerful and influential man, with deep connections and a reputation for ruthlessness. But I was no longer the naive and vulnerable songwriter who had been betrayed and manipulated. I was a survivor, a fighter, and a force to be reckoned with. I was determined to expose his crimes, to hold him accountable for his actions, and to reclaim the life that he had stolen from me. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready for the fight. The game was on. I started digging, using all the resources I had gained over the years. My lawyer, Sarah, was immediately on board, her eyes gleaming with the prospect of taking down such a formidable opponent. We knew we needed solid proof. Testimonials wouldn't be enough against his army of lawyers. We needed documents, emails, something concrete that tied him directly to the sabotage. It took months, but finally we found it. An old email buried deep in the archives of a disgruntled former employee of the producer S detailed his specific instructions to exclude me from any deals involving Chloe. It was a smoking gun. We filed a new lawsuit, this time targeting the producer directly. The charges were serious: conspiracy, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The media went wild. The story of the betrayed songwriter, manipulated by a powerful mogul, was irresistible. The producer's reputation crumbled overnight. Artists he had championed distanced themselves, and his carefully constructed empire began to crack. He tried to fight back, of course, denying the allegations and launching his own counteroffensive. But the evidence was too strong, the public outrage too intense. One by one, the people he had controlled and intimidated for years began to come forward, sharing their own stories of abuse and manipulation. The dam had broken. In the end, he was forced to settle. He paid a hefty sum in damages, issued a public apology, and was effectively blacklisted from the music industry. It wasn't just a legal victory, it was a moral one. I had not only reclaimed my career, but it also helped to expose a system of abuse and exploitation that had been allowed to fester for far too long. The experience changed me. I became even more outspoken, using my platform to advocate for ethical practices and to empower young artists. I knew that the fight for justice was never truly over, that there would always be those who sought to exploit and manipulate. But I also knew that with courage, determination, and the support of a community, anything was possible. As for Chloe, we eventually rebuilt our friendship, stronger and more resilient than before. She had learned her lesson, and I had forgiven her. We both understood that we had been pawns in a larger game, manipulated by forces beyond our control. But we had survived, and we had emerged with a newfound appreciation for the value of integrity and the importance of standing together. Years later, as I stood on the stage accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award, I looked out at the audience and saw Chloe sitting in the front row, beaming with pride. I knew that we had both come a long way, that we had both overcome adversity, and that we had both found our own paths to success. And I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would always have each other's backs. Because in the end, the most important thing is not the fame or the fortune, but the bonds of friendship, the power of forgiveness, and the courage to fight for what is right. The music plays on. The years following the producer's downfall were a whirlwind of activity. I dedicated myself to reforming the music industry from the inside out, serving on committees, lobbying for legislation, and mentoring young artists who were just starting out. I wanted to make sure that no one else had to endure the kind of exploitation and manipulation that I had experienced. I became a symbol of hope and resilience, a voice for the voiceless, a champion for the underdog. My music took on a new depth and meaning, resonating with audiences in a way that I had never thought possible. I wrote songs about justice, equality, and the importance of standing up for what you believe in. My concerts became rallies, my albums became manifestos, and my voice became a beacon of light in a world that often seemed dark and cynical. Chloe and I grew closer than ever, our bond forged in the fires of adversity. We collaborated on several projects, writing songs together, performing together, and even starting a joint foundation to support young female artists. We had both learned from our mistakes, and we were determined to use our experiences to make a positive impact on the world. But even as I was achieving my goals and making a difference, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I had poured so much of myself into my work, my activism, and my advocacy that I had neglected my personal life. I had been so focused on fighting for justice that I had forgotten to nurture my own happiness. I was still single, still living in the same small apartment, and still haunted by the memories of my past. I longed for companionship, for love, for a sense of belonging that went beyond my professional achievements. I wanted to find someone who would love me for who I was, not for what I had accomplished. I wanted to build a family, to create a home, and to share my life with someone special. But I was afraid. I was afraid of getting hurt again, of being betrayed again, of opening myself up to vulnerability and disappointment. I had built walls around my heart, protecting myself from the pain of the past, and I didn't know how to tear them down. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings and interviews, I decided to escape the city and drive out to the countryside. I needed to clear my head, to reconnect with nature, and to find some peace and quiet. I drove for hours, listening to music and watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant colors. As darkness fell, I found myself on a deserted country road, surrounded by rolling hills and twinkling stars. I pulled over to the side of the road, turned off the engine, and stepped out of the car. The air was crisp and cool, and the silence was deafening. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, letting the tranquility of the countryside wash over me. Suddenly, I heard a faint sound in the distance, the sound of music. It was a haunting melody, played on a lone fiddle drifting through the night air. I was drawn to the music, curious to discover its source. I followed the sound, walking along the deserted road until I came to a small, run-down barn. The barn was dimly lit, and the music was coming from inside. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I should intrude. But the music was so captivating, so mesmerizing, that I couldn't resist. I cautiously opened the barn door and stepped inside. The sight that greeted me took my breath away. The barn was filled with people, dancing and laughing and singing along to the music. They were a motley crew, young and old, rich and poor, black and white, all united by their love of music and dance. In the center of the barn, a lone fiddler was playing his heart out, his eyes closed, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the lanterns. As I watched the scene unfold, I felt a sense of warmth and belonging that I hadn't felt in years. I realized that this was what I had been missing. This was what I had been searching for. I wanted to be a part of this community, to share in their joy, to experience their love, and to find my own happiness in their midst. As the fiddler finished his song, the dancers applauded and cheered. He opened his eyes and looked around the barn, his gaze eventually landing on me. He smiled, a warm and welcoming smile, and beckoned me to come closer. I walked towards him, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. As I got closer, I noticed that he was even more handsome than I had initially thought. He had kind eyes, a rugged face, and a gentle demeanor. "Welcome," he said, his voice soft and melodic. "I'm Caleb. What's your name?" "Amelia," I replied, feeling my cheeks flush. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Caleb." "The pleasure is all mine, Amelia," he said. "What brings you to our humble barn tonight?" I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I should tell him my story. But something about him made me feel safe and comfortable, as if I could trust him with anything. I took a deep breath and began to tell him about my life, my career, my struggles, and my search for happiness. He listened intently, his eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, he nodded slowly and said, "You've been through a lot, Amelia, but you're a strong and courageous woman. You deserve to be happy." His words touched me deeply, and I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. I realized that he was right. I did deserve to be happy. And maybe, just maybe, I had finally found a place where I could find that happiness. "Thank you, Caleb," I said, my voice trembling. "That means a lot to me." "Come," he said, taking my hand. "Let me introduce you to my friends. They're good people and they'll welcome you with open arms." He led me around the barn, introducing me to the dancers, the singers, and the musicians. Everyone was so friendly and welcoming, making me feel like I was already a part of their community. As the night wore on, I found myself laughing and dancing and singing along to the music. I felt alive and energized, as if I had been reborn. I realized that I had finally found my tribe, my people, my place in the world, and I had Caleb to thank for it. As the night drew to a close, Caleb walked me back to my car. We stood in silence for a moment, gazing at the stars. "Thank you, Caleb," I said, breaking the silence, "for everything, for making me feel welcome, for making me feel alive, and for showing me that there is still good in the world." "You're welcome, Amelia," he said, smiling. "It was my pleasure. I hope you'll come back again soon." "I will," I said, my heart swelling with happiness. "I promise." As I drove back to the city, I couldn't stop thinking about Caleb. He was everything I had ever wanted in a man: kind, compassionate, talented, and genuine. I knew that I was falling for him, and I wasn't afraid. I was ready to open my heart again, to take a chance on love, and to see where this new adventure would lead me. Little did I know that Caleb had a secret of his own, a secret that would soon test the strength of our newfound connection and challenge everything I thought I knew about love and trust. That secret was about to change everything and plunge me into a new, unexpected battle, one that would force me to confront my past and redefine my future once again. As I started spending more time with Caleb, I discovered that his life wasn't as simple as it seemed. He was a talented musician, yes, but he was also burdened by a past that he couldn't seem to escape. He told me about his family, about his struggles, and about the challenges he faced as a small-town musician trying to make a living in a world dominated by corporate interests. He was fighting an uphill battle, trying to preserve the traditions of his community while also trying to provide for his family. I admired his dedication, his resilience, and his unwavering commitment to his values. But I also worried about him. I could see the toll that his struggles were taking on him, the stress that was weighing him down. I wanted to help him, to support him, and to ease his burden in any way that I could. One day, Caleb told me about a local music festival that was coming up, a festival that was crucial to the survival of his community. The festival was a celebration of traditional music and dance, a showcase for local talent, and a vital source of income for the town. But the festival was facing a serious threat. A large corporation was trying to buy up the land where the festival was held, with plans to build a luxury resort. If the corporation succeeded, the festival would be shut down, the community would be devastated, and Caleb's livelihood would be destroyed. I was outraged. I couldn't believe that anyone would be so heartless as to try to destroy such a valuable cultural institution for the sake of profit. I knew that I had to do something to help. I offered to use my platform and my resources to raise awareness about the festival and to fight against the corporation's plans. Caleb was hesitant at first, unsure if he wanted to involve me in his troubles. He was afraid of putting me in danger, of exposing me to the same kind of exploitation and manipulation that I had experienced in the past. But I insisted. I told him that I was no longer afraid, that I was ready to fight for what I believed in, and that I was determined to help him save his community. Together, we launched a campaign to raise awareness about the festival and to rally support from the public. We organized concerts, we held rallies, and we launched a social media campaign that went viral. We told the story of the festival, the story of the community, and the story of Caleb's struggle to preserve his heritage. Our message resonated with people all over the world, and soon we had a global movement behind us. The corporation was taken aback by the outpouring of support for the festival. They had underestimated the power of community and the strength of our collective voice. They tried to discredit us, to intimidate us, and to buy us off, but we refused to back down. We were determined to fight for what was right, and we wouldn't rest until we had won. As the battle raged on, I began to uncover some disturbing information about the corporation and its CEO. I discovered that they had a long history of exploiting communities, destroying the environment, and manipulating politicians to get their way. They were ruthless and unscrupulous, and they would stop at nothing to achieve their goals. I knew that we were up against a formidable opponent, but I also knew that we had the power of truth and justice on our side. With Sarah's help, we started digging deeper, investigating the corporation's finances, its dealings, and its connections. We uncovered a web of corruption and deceit that reached all the way to the highest levels of government. We found evidence of bribery, fraud, and illegal activities that could land the CEO and his cronies in jail. We knew that we had to expose this information to the public, but we also knew that we were putting ourselves in grave danger. The corporation had the resources to silence us, to discredit us, and even to harm us. But we were not afraid. We were ready to risk everything to expose the truth and to bring these criminals to justice. One evening, as I was working late in my apartment, I received a threatening phone call. A voice on the other end of the line warned me to back off, to stop investigating the corporation, and to leave Caleb alone. The voice told me that if I didn't comply, I would regret it. I was shaken by the call, but I refused to be intimidated. I knew that I was on the right track, that I was getting closer to exposing the truth. I decided to double down on my efforts, to work even harder to bring the corporation to justice. I shared the information about the threatening phone call with Caleb, and he was furious. He wanted to protect me, to keep me safe, and to shield me from the dangers of his world. But I told him that I wasn't afraid, that I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and that I was determined to see this fight through to the end. Together, we decided to go public with our findings. We organized a press conference, inviting reporters from all over the world to attend. We laid out all the evidence we had gathered, exposing the corporation's corruption, its crimes, and its attempts to silence us. The press conference was a bombshell. The media went wild and the public was outraged. The corporation's stock price plummeted, its reputation was ruined, and its CEO was forced to resign. The government launched an investigation, and soon indictments were handed down. The CEO and his cronies were arrested and charged with a range of crimes, including bribery, fraud, and conspiracy. They faced the prospect of spending the rest of their lives in prison. The community rejoiced. The music festival was saved, the corporation's plans were thwarted, and Caleb's livelihood was secured. We had won. We had defeated the corporation, exposed its crimes, and brought its leaders to justice. But the victory came at a cost. The threats against me and Caleb intensified, and we had to take extra precautions to protect ourselves. We hired security guards, we installed surveillance cameras, and we avoided public appearances. We knew that the corporation's allies were still out there, and that they were determined to seek revenge. One night, as Caleb and I were driving home from a concert, we were ambushed. A group of masked men attacked our car, firing shots and trying to force us off the road. We managed to escape, but our car was badly damaged, and we were both shaken. We knew that this was just the beginning, that the corporation's allies would stop at nothing to silence us. We decided to go into hiding, to disappear from the public eye until the threats subsided. We left the city and retreated to a remote cabin in the mountains, where we could be safe and secure. We spent our days hiking, reading, and playing music, trying to forget about the dangers that were lurking in the shadows. But even in our secluded paradise, we couldn't escape the fear and the anxiety that plagued us. We knew that the corporation's allies were still searching for us, and that it was only a matter of time before they found us. As I lay awake one night, listening to the wind howling through the trees, I realized that I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't hide from my enemies, I couldn't let fear control my life, and I couldn't allow the corporation to win. I knew that I had to take action, to confront my enemies head-on, and to put an end to this nightmare once and for all. I decided to launch a counteroffensive, to use all my resources and my skills to track down the corporation's allies and to bring them to justice. I knew that it would be a dangerous and risky undertaking, but I was determined to protect myself, to protect Caleb, and to protect the community that we had fought so hard to save. Little did I know that my counteroffensive would lead me down a dark and treacherous path, one that would force me to confront my own demons and to make a difficult choice that would change my life forever. This decision would plunge me into a dangerous game of cat and mouse, where the stakes were higher than ever, and where the line between justice and revenge would become increasingly blurred. I started by reaching out to my network of contacts, the journalists, the activists, and the investigators who had helped me in the past. I asked them to dig into the backgrounds of the people who I suspected were behind the attack on our car. I gave them the names, the addresses, and any other information that I had. Within days, they started to uncover some disturbing connections. The masked men who had attacked us were linked to a private security firm that had been hired by the corporation. The firm was known for its aggressive tactics and its willingness to break the law to protect its clients. The firm's CEO was a former military officer with a shady past and a reputation for violence. I knew that I had to find a way to get to him, to expose his crimes, and to bring him to justice. I decided to infiltrate the firm, to go undercover and gather evidence that would prove his involvement in the attack on us. I knew that it would be a dangerous and risky undertaking, but I was determined to do whatever it took to protect myself and Caleb. I spent weeks preparing for my mission, studying the firm's operations, learning its protocols, and training in self-defense. I changed my appearance, adopting a new identity and a new backstory. I practiced my acting skills, learning how to blend in and how to deceive my enemies. Finally, I was ready. I applied for a job at the firm, posing as a security consultant with a background in law enforcement. I aced the interview, impressing the CEO with my knowledge, my skills, and my apparent ruthlessness. I was hired on the spot. As I started working at the firm, I quickly realized that it was even more corrupt and dangerous than I had imagined. The employees were a mix of former military personnel, mercenaries, and criminals, all united by their loyalty to the CEO and their willingness to do whatever he asked. The firm was involved in a range of illegal activities, including extortion, money laundering, and arms trafficking. I knew that I had to be careful, that one wrong move could expose me and put me in grave danger. I started gathering evidence, collecting documents, recording conversations, and taking photos. I worked in the shadows, using my skills to bypass security systems, to access restricted areas, and to uncover the firm's secrets. I shared my findings with Sarah, who was working on building a legal case against the CEO and the firm. Together, we were building an airtight case that would expose their crimes and bring them to justice. As I got closer to the truth, I realized that the CEO was not just a hired gun. He was also a true believer in the corporation's cause. He believed that the corporation was doing good for the world, that it was creating jobs, boosting the economy, and improving people's lives. He saw anyone who opposed the corporation as an enemy, a threat to his way of life. I knew that I had to change his mind, to show him the truth about the corporation's corruption and its destructive impact on communities. I started engaging with him, challenging his beliefs, and presenting him with evidence of the corporation's wrongdoing. I used my skills as a communicator, as a storyteller, and as a persuader to try to reach him, to appeal to his sense of morality and his sense of justice. Slowly but surely, I started to make progress. The CEO began to question his own beliefs, to doubt the corporation's motives, and to see the harm that it was causing. He started to confide in me, sharing his doubts, his fears, and his regrets. One night, the CEO invited me to his office for a private meeting. He told me that he had made a decision, that he was ready to turn against the corporation and to expose its crimes. He said that he was tired of living a lie, that he wanted to do what was right, and that he was willing to risk everything to make amends for his past actions. I was overjoyed. I had succeeded in my mission. I had convinced the CEO to turn against the corporation, and I was one step closer to bringing them to justice. But as I celebrated my victory, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I sensed a trap, a betrayal, a danger that was lurking just around the corner. Little did I know that my instincts were right, and that I was about to walk into a deadly ambush that would test my courage, my skills, and my resolve like never before. This confrontation would force me to make a life-altering decision, one that would determine not only my fate, but also the fate of Caleb and the community that we had fought so hard to protect. As I entered the CEO's office, I immediately felt a sense of unease. The room was dimly lit, and the air was thick with tension. The CEO was sitting behind his desk, his face pale and drawn. He looked nervous, as if he was expecting something bad to happen. "Amelia, thank you for coming," he said, his voice trembling. "I have something important to tell you." I sat down across from him, my senses on high alert. I knew that something was wrong, that I was walking into a trap. "What is it?" I asked, trying to sound calm and collected. The CEO hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and said, "I've been contacted by the corporation. They know about my plans to turn against them. They've offered me a deal. If I betray you, they'll protect me and my family. If I don't, they'll destroy us all." I wasn't surprised. I had suspected that the corporation was one step ahead of us, that they were monitoring our every move. I knew that the CEO was weak, that he was easily manipulated, and that he was capable of anything to protect himself. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. The CEO looked at me, his eyes filled with desperation. "I don't know," he said. "I'm torn. I want to do what's right, but I can't risk my family's safety." I understood his dilemma. He was caught between a rock and a hard place, forced to choose between his conscience and his survival. But I also knew that I couldn't let him betray me, that I couldn't let the corporation win. "I have a plan," I said, my mind racing. "We can use this situation to our advantage. We can pretend to go along with the corporation's plan, but in reality, we'll be setting them up for a fall." The CEO looked at me, his eyes widening. "What do you mean?" he asked. I explained my plan, outlining the steps we would need to take to deceive the corporation, to gather evidence of their crimes, and to bring them to justice. The plan was risky, but it was also brilliant. It would require us to put our lives on the line, but it would also give us the best chance of defeating the corporation once and for all. The CEO listened intently, his expression changing from fear to hope. He realized that my plan was our only chance, that it was the only way to protect himself and his family while also doing what was right. "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "I'm in. Let's do it." We spent the next few hours preparing for our deception. We rehearsed our lines, we coordinated our actions, and we made sure that we were both on the same page. We knew that we had to be convincing, that we had to sell our performance to the corporation, or else our plan would fail. As we were preparing, I received a phone call from Caleb. He told me that he had a bad feeling, that he sensed that something was wrong. He urged me to leave the firm, to come back to the cabin, and to forget about the corporation. I wanted to tell him the truth, to share my plan with him, but I couldn't. I knew that the corporation was monitoring our phones and that any information I revealed could put him in danger. "I'm fine, Caleb," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "Everything is under control. I'll be back soon." I hung up the phone, feeling a pang of guilt. I hated lying to Caleb, but I knew that it was necessary to protect him. I promised myself that as soon as this was over, I would tell him everything, and we would start our lives anew. As the night wore on, the corporation contacted the CEO, instructing him to lure me to a remote location where they could take me into custody. The CEO followed their instructions, telling me that he had arranged a meeting with a high-ranking executive who was willing to negotiate a settlement. I knew that it was a trap, but I played along, pretending to be eager to meet with the executive. We drove to the designated location, a deserted warehouse on the outskirts of town. As we approached the warehouse, I saw a group of armed men waiting for us. They were the corporation's enforcers, the same men who had attacked our car. I knew that this was it, that this was the moment of truth. I turned to the CEO, my eyes filled with determination. "Remember the plan," I said. "It's time to put on a show." We stepped out of the car, putting on our best act. The CEO pretended to be surrendering me to the enforcers, while I pretended to be terrified and helpless. The enforcers approached us, their guns drawn. As they reached for me, I unleashed my fury. I used all my training, all my skills, and all my rage to attack the enforcers. I disarmed them, I incapacitated them, and I left them writhing on the ground. The CEO watched in amazement as I single-handedly took down the corporation's enforcers. He had no idea that I was so skilled, so dangerous, and so determined. As the last enforcer fell, I turned to the CEO, my face grim. "It's time to finish this," I said. "Let's go after the corporation." Together, we stormed the warehouse, searching for the executives who had orchestrated this attack. We found them hiding in a back room, huddled together in fear. They were the top dogs of the corporation, the ones who had made the decisions to exploit communities, to destroy the environment, and to silence their critics. I confronted them, exposing their crimes and their corruption. I told them that their reign of terror was over, that they would be held accountable for their actions, and that they would face the full force of the law. The executives tried to bribe me, to threaten me, and to plead with me, but I was unmoved. I had seen too much suffering, I had endured too much pain, and I was not going to let them get away with their crimes. I called the authorities, reporting the executives and their crimes. Within minutes, the warehouse was swarming with police officers, arresting the executives and seizing their assets. The corporation was finished. Its leaders were in jail, its reputation was ruined, and its assets were frozen. Justice had finally been served. As I stood in the warehouse, surrounded by police officers and reporters, I felt a sense of triumph and relief. I had defeated the corporation, I had exposed their crimes, and I had protected the community that I had come to love. But as I celebrated my victory, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. I realized that I had been so focused on fighting for justice that I had neglected my own happiness. I had been so consumed by my mission that I had forgotten about Caleb. I knew that I had to find him, to tell him the truth, and to start our lives anew. I left the warehouse and drove back to the cabin, my heart filled with hope and anticipation. But as I approached the cabin, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The cabin was on fire, engulfed in flames. I knew that Caleb was inside, and I knew that the corporation's allies had found him. My heart shattered into a million pieces. All my victories, all my triumphs, all my sacrifices meant nothing if I had lost the one person who mattered most to me. I screamed his name, running towards the burning cabin, desperate to save him. But it was too late. The flames were too high, the heat was too intense, and the smoke was too thick. I couldn't reach him. I watched in horror as the cabin collapsed, consumed by the fire. Caleb was gone, and I was left alone with nothing but ashes and memories. My world had been shattered, my heart had been broken, and my soul had been crushed. I had lost everything, and I knew that I would never be the same again. The next chapter of my life would be defined by grief, by loss, and by a burning desire for revenge. I would hunt down the people who had killed Caleb, and I would make them pay for their crimes. I would become a force of vengeance, a harbinger of justice, and a nightmare for anyone who dared to cross me. The game had changed. The rules had been broken. And I was ready to play dirty. The line between justice and revenge had been erased, and I was ready to cross it. The funeral was a blur. Friends, family, and members of the music community gathered to mourn Caleb, their faces etched with grief and disbelief. I stood numbly, unable to process the reality of his absence. The world felt muted, as if a vital part of me had been extinguished along with the flames that consumed the cabin. Sarah stood by my side, a silent pillar of support. Her presence was a comfort, but nothing could fill the void that Caleb had left behind. After the service, I retreated to the ruins of the cabin, sifting through the ashes, searching for some small memento, some tangible reminder of the man I had loved. All I found were charred remnants, twisted metal, and the bitter scent of smoke. As darkness fell, I sat alone amidst the ruins, the flickering flames casting long, eerie shadows. The pain was unbearable, a constant ache that gnawed at my soul. I wept openly, releasing the pent-up grief and rage that had been building inside me. In that moment of despair, I made a vow. I vowed to avenge Caleb's death, to hunt down the people who had taken him from me, and to make them suffer the same pain that I was feeling. I would become their worst nightmare, their reckoning, their ultimate downfall. I started by retracing the steps of the investigation, reviewing the evidence, and piecing together the events that had led to Caleb's death. I discovered that the arson had been carried out by a team of mercenaries hired by the corporation's remaining allies, individuals who had managed to evade justice. They were ruthless and skilled, experts in covert operations and assassination. I knew that I couldn't take them on alone. I needed help, but I couldn't trust anyone. The corporation had infiltrated every aspect of my life, and I couldn't risk exposing my plans to anyone who might betray me. I decided to enlist the help of a former colleague, a woman named Maya who had worked with me at the security firm. Maya was a skilled hacker and intelligence analyst with a deep understanding of the criminal underworld. She had left the firm after becoming disillusioned with its methods, and I knew that she would be willing to help me. I contacted Maya, explaining my situation and asking for her assistance. She agreed without hesitation. She had admired Caleb, and she was outraged by his murder. She was eager to help me bring his killers to justice. Together, we set up a clandestine operation, using our skills and resources to track down the mercenaries. Maya used her hacking skills to infiltrate their communication networks, intercepting their emails, text messages, and phone calls. I used my knowledge of security protocols and surveillance techniques to monitor their movements and gather intelligence. As we gathered information, we discovered that the mercenaries were planning to flee the country, to escape justice and disappear into the shadows. We knew that we had to act quickly to intercept them before they could leave. We tracked them to a remote airfield where they were preparing to board a private jet. I knew that this was my chance. I couldn't let them escape. I armed myself with a weapon, donned a disguise, and set out to confront them. As I approached the airfield, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I was ready to face my enemies, to avenge Caleb's death, and to bring justice to his killers. I infiltrated the airfield, using my skills to bypass security and evade detection. I located the mercenaries' jet and prepared to launch my attack. I burst onto the tarmac, guns blazing, catching the mercenaries by surprise. A fierce firefight ensued. The mercenaries were skilled and heavily armed, but I was fueled by rage and grief. I fought with a ferocity that I didn't know I possessed, taking down the mercenaries one by one. As the last mercenary fell, I stood over his body, my gun still smoking. I had avenged Caleb's death, but as I looked at the carnage around me, I felt a sense of emptiness. The revenge had not brought me the peace that I had hoped for. It had only left me feeling more hollow, more lost. I realized that I couldn't continue down this path. I couldn't let revenge consume me. I had to find a way to heal, to move on, and to honor Caleb's memory in a way that would bring light to the world, not darkness. I decided to dedicate my life to fighting for justice, to advocating for victims of violence, and to promoting peace and understanding. I would use my experiences, my skills, and my platform to make a positive impact on the world, to create a future where no one would have to endure the pain and suffering that I had experienced. I returned to Nashville, determined to rebuild my life and to make a difference. I started by establishing a foundation in Caleb's name, providing support to aspiring musicians and promoting traditional music education. I also became an advocate for gun control, speaking out against violence and calling for stricter regulations. I used my music to share my story, to inspire others, and to promote healing and reconciliation. My songs became anthems of hope, resilience, and the power of love. As time went on, I began to find peace. The pain of Caleb's loss never completely disappeared, but it became more bearable. I learned to live with my grief, to honor his memory, and to find joy in the world again. I found love again with someone who understood my past, who supported my goals, and who loved me for who I was. We built a life together, filled with music, laughter, and a shared commitment to making the world a better place. And as I looked back on my journey, I realized that I had come full circle. I had started as a betrayed songwriter, seeking revenge against those who had wronged me. But I had ended as a champion for justice, using my pain and my experiences to create a better world. I had learned that revenge is a destructive force, that it only leads to more pain and suffering. And I had discovered that true healing comes from forgiveness, from compassion, and from a commitment to making a positive difference in the world. The music plays on, a testament to the power of love, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring hope for a brighter future. But even as I found peace and happiness, I never forgot Caleb. His memory remained a constant source of inspiration, a reminder of the importance of fighting for what is right, and a testament to the transformative power of love. And as I looked to the future, I knew that his legacy would live on, through my music, my activism, and the countless lives that I had touched along the way. The story of Amelia, the betrayed songwriter turned champion for justice, would continue to be told, inspiring generations to come. But there was one final chapter to be written, a chapter that would bring closure to the past and open the door to a new beginning. A chapter that would reveal a shocking secret, a secret that would challenge everything I thought I knew about Caleb and his death. And that secret was about to change everything, once again. Years later, while archiving some of Caleb's belongings for the foundation, I stumbled upon a hidden compartment in his old guitar case. Inside, I found a stack of letters, tied together with a faded ribbon. The letters were addressed to Caleb, and the return address was a name I didn't recognize. Curiosity piqued, I carefully untied the ribbon and began to read. The letters were passionate and intimate, revealing a secret love affair that Caleb had been carrying on for years. The writer was a woman named Eliza, who lived in a neighboring town. She wrote of her deep love for Caleb, her longing for his presence, and her frustration with their secret relationship. As I read further, I discovered that Eliza had been married when she and Caleb began their affair. Her husband was a wealthy and powerful businessman with a reputation for being possessive and jealous. The letters hinted at the danger that Caleb and Eliza were in if their affair was ever discovered. My heart sank as I pieced together the truth. Caleb had been leading a double life, concealing his relationship with Eliza from me and from everyone else in his community. I felt betrayed and heartbroken. How could he have kept such a secret from me? Had our love been a lie? As I continued reading, I came across a letter that sent shivers down my spine. In the letter, Eliza wrote of her decision to leave her husband and run away with Caleb. She said that she couldn't bear to live without him any longer, and that she was willing to risk everything for their love. But she also expressed her fear that her husband would find out about their plans and that he would seek revenge. The letter was dated just days before Caleb's death. A chilling realization washed over me. Caleb's death had not been a random act of violence. It had been a targeted assassination, orchestrated by Eliza's jealous husband. The corporation's allies had not been responsible for the arson. They had been hired by Eliza's husband to eliminate Caleb and to silence Eliza. I felt a surge of rage and grief. Caleb had been murdered, not for his activism, not for his opposition to the corporation, but for his love affair with a married woman. His death had been a crime of passion, a tragedy fueled by jealousy and betrayal. I knew that I had to bring Eliza's husband to justice. He had gone away with murder for too long, and it was time for him to pay for his crimes. I contacted Sarah, sharing my discovery and asking for her help. She was shocked and saddened by the news, but she was also determined to bring Caleb's true killer to justice. We launched a new investigation, focusing on Eliza's husband and his connections to the mercenaries. We gathered evidence, interviewed witnesses, and pieced together the timeline of events leading up to Caleb's death. We discovered that Eliza's husband had a long history of violence and intimidation. He had used his wealth and power to silence,